this session, as we said, is around how to upgrade, tips and tricks, and how to make this effortless. The reality is it's never that simple. So it's always a good way to say that in terms of marketing. So that's probably our marketing department that got up with the name of the session. We wanted to make it look easy, but in fact, we're going to try to show you how to do this easily, but it's never that easy. And but again, you need to do the right planning when you do this type of upgrade. So that's what we're going to try to convey during this session, Patrick.
Yes, so back in August, I believe it was, Bruno and I have done a live LinkedIn event where we did an actual live migration from 4.2 to 4.3. A lot of the feedback and the questions were about, can we have checklists or can we have more details on this and that? So today is a lot of, common sense tasks that you will know, test and plan and all that, but I try to give a lot of, real example of project plans and real example of test scripts and that sort of thing. So hopefully you find this valuable. And like Bruno said, do ask questions. Okay, so 10 tips. Tip number 1, well, actually the tip number 1 is 38 tips. So earlier this year, with I'm sure some of you on this session today, we've done these 38 tips and tricks that every administrator should know. A lot of them were about upgrades and migrations. So you see the link at the end of this slide. This presentation and these slides are shared with you at the end of this session. Like Bruno said, it will take a day or so. Don't have to take all of these notes here. But yes, tip number 1, I give you 38 tips. So here we go. Moving on. Oh, yes, I went a bit crazy with these animated GIFs for this presentation. So getting informed, it sounds tedious. It sounds, it's boring sometimes. I'm the first to say, oh, you know what, I know 4.2 by heart and 4.1 by heart, and I've been doing this for a long time. You really need to read yet again something about 4.3. Well, the obvious answer is yes, you should, because even if 80% of the product is the same, there's always these usual things around, right? What's new in 4.3? It's important to know which ones may or may not affect your project. There's always release notes, even when there's a new service pack. These things have been decommissioned, so these things are working differently. These things, we did not have time to put them in the product. And this is what happened in 4.3. There's even a catch-up, knowledge base saying that these things will appear only in service pack 1. So once again, you don't want to migrate or upgrade if the product you want to go to is not, well, first of all, stable, of course, but doesn't have all the bits that you need. The PAM is, as you know, I'm sure, telling you operating system supported, browsers that are being supported. Well, if SAP stopped the support of something and you have not migrated that thing internally, well, you can't upgrade, right? If you have an old version of Oracle or SQL Server and your DBAs are not done migrating this thing just yet, well, too bad. You cannot go to 4.3. You need to wait. So again, it's not about just business objects, it's the stuff around it. The maintenance schedule, so it is a public document telling you when the next fix pack and the next service pack will be released. So we know that service pack 1 will be released in December this year, and then patch 1, patch 2, and so on. So if somebody was telling me right now, Patrick, I want to go live with 4.3 in 2 weeks, I'll say, okay, fine, but that's a bit of a shame when SP1, which should have all of the catch-up stuff, would be released the first week of December. Are you sure you can't wait maybe just another couple of weeks or even early January? What's the rush? So again, have a look at the schedule so you can decide what is the best time for you to upgrade with the best version. And finally, there's the upgrade method. in the first session today, there was a poll about which versions people are at. Everybody was already in 4.2, some service pack, which means that all of you can go to 4.3 directly. Yeah, you're at 3.1, you need to have a middle stage. So have a look at these 3 links here when we share the slides. I wrote an SAP blog about doing an in-place upgrade. That's installing 4.3 on top of 4.2. In August, we've done a live LinkedIn where I've done a side-by-side 4.2 to 4.3 on different servers. And I've done a GB & Smith blog where I detail some of the pros and cons of each of these methods. So,
and
go on, Bruno.
Patrick, probably one, one thing I'd be curious to hear from the audience, and you can feel free to put a comment in the chat box. I'd be interested to know, okay, most of you are in 4.2, and, I'm assuming we'll be going to 4.3. I'm actually curious to know who's going to do side by side and who's going to be going in place, because that's always a very passionate debate. I know we've talked a lot about it, and we believe, and the right thing for good reason is side by side, but I'm actually very interested to hear if some people or what people are doing. So please feel free to put a comment in the chat box. Are you going to do a side by side or an in place? It's going to be interesting just to exchange around that at the end of these tricks. So let's go for the next one, Patrick.
Yeah, like that. So just before I continue, based on feedbacks we've had back in July, back in other sessions we've done around the world, polls I've done on LinkedIn and so on, most of this session today will be assuming that doing it side by side. So I'll be talking about more steps. But if you choose to do it in place, the same steps the same process will be applicable, but you'll be doing perhaps a little bit less. So side by side is the how it's going to be today. All right. So next slide, Bruno. You mentioned a box of chocolate earlier. You want to talk about that just a bit?
The reality is, about this expression, as Patrick knows, is I always like to say, when you do an upgrade of business object or when you want to find things out is, at the end, people love Bobjet. So I always say it's like a box of chocolate, but the issue is, like a good box of chocolate, you never know what's inside. So when you do an upgrade, there's always something that's not as good as what you had planned. And eventually there's something that you did not know why that chocolate is a little bit different. You don't know. That's why I tend to use that analogy pretty often. Of course, I love the Forrest Gump movie. So
okay,
that's the other reason.
So before you even go ahead and plan your upgrade, you want to know what's inside of your business objects. Now, some of you may be really well organized and know this by heart, or maybe it's a small deployment and it's easier for some of you to know what you have. But if you're new in the company, if you're an external consultant, if you have a business objects deployment which is really self-service, you're not going to know for sure what's out there. And a while back, we created this ultimate checklist. The link is here. Feel free to have a look later on. But I wrote here what is for me, maybe, I don't know how many there are, let's say 8 or 10, top 8 or 10 information that you want to have when you start planning your upgrade. You want to understand how your security is applied, especially if it's with third-party authentication, because when you go to a new server, there's some work that needs to be done. If you have universe restrictions, you need, again, to make sure your rights and your authentications are set up properly. And this will become very important if you do a phased go live, and I'll come back to that later. If you do a big bang, and so migrate everything and go live, less risk in that respect. If you do a phase go live, you have to be really careful how you move your content and your groups, otherwise you may break, well, you will break the universe restrictions if you're not careful. So again, I have done migrations as an external consultant for nearly 20 years. This is all the kind of questions I ask, because if somebody says, yes, I use restrictions, I already know I have to be careful about other things. Knowing the the number of objects and the actions done on objects, this may this can help you with cleanup or archiving. I personally like to not touch the source environment. I prefer to say, it's not broken, don't fix it, leave it there. I like to migrate everything. I like to back up and then clean and archive. If there's any problem, I can always restore in the newer version rather than having an old backup. So that's my preferred way. Now we'll come back to that. And the type of objects, if you say, oh, we use Lumira, well, you need in 4.3, you need to have Lumira 2.4. You can't have just any Lumira. If you say, oh, we have Explorer or the old Excelsius, well, it's gone in 4.3. What are you going to do about it? So again, type of objects which are used by the business is important. Now, the size of the file store, it doesn't really matter, I suppose, other than knowing how long it will take to promote the content from 4.2 to 4.3. I've done big migrations with 500,000 Webby reports and instances and all that. Well, it will run for several hours, and I have done some that took 2.5 days to run, right? So when you plan, you go live. If you already know that promoting everything will take 2.5 days, it's unlikely you'll do a big bang, because if you do that, you're out of sync for 2.5 days. It's not possible. So again, the size of the file store will give you a good indication about the type of projects and go live you want to do. Your server configuration, your database connectivity, of course, is important because the universes are based on it. You have recurring instances. It's important because they need to run, but they will have destinations. So your service accounts for FTP, the email addresses, the SMTP, all of these things. And you may not know this, just in case, the client tools, there are different client tools for 4.3, as you would imagine. They are all 64-bit actually now on 4.3, which is really nice, but you cannot have 4.2 and 4.3 client tools installed on the same workstation, on the same server, which means this is important because you want to test things. Well, you can't have IDT 4.2 and IDT 4.3 in the same box. You need to think about that for your testing. So super long checklist, a lot of information in this blog. Have a look. This will help for the next step.
And we'll share at the end the link and the follow-up of that checklist that we put together. And the nice thing is it was actually pretty interactive. So.
I create a project plan. So that's really me at the left. Many years ago, when I joined this company, we were doing bigger and bigger migrations, and somebody said one day, I think it would be a good idea to have a project manager. And I said, oh, come on, this is just business objects. I've done this forever, and no, I don't need a project manager. It was really boring me. But the reality is, the bigger projects or the bigger companies, people here on the phone, it's not good to be Bob being the admin and the database guy, the business objects guy, and the trainer and the support. It's going to be many people having different hats, and having different roles and responsibility adds complexity to your project. How many migrations I've done where everybody says, okay, we're ready to start. I show up on Monday to do the upgrade. Oh, the server is not ready. Actually, we'll be ready on Wednesday. But the database guy is ready. Well, that's pointless for me to have the database guy ready if the server guy is not ready. Or the server is ready, the database is ready, but I don't have a service account to log on to the server. And all of these things sound obvious, but I'm telling you, bigger companies, and I'm sure some of you will relate to this, if you don't have all the right prerequisites in the right order at the right time, it creates massive delays. So again, project plan. And I'll show you an example on the next slide. Have a project plan, make sure everybody knows what they have to do by when. Do expect that you need to repair things, so allocate time for that. And me personally, I was always allocated time for contingency, because again, so even if you plan the best you can, you will miss one or two things, right? So a bit of contingency is good. This is an example of a project plan that I have used in the past. Okay, it's It's only a small part of it. That one was only for the production environment. But yes, you need to, there'll be some people doing the prerequisites, and maybe it's not the same resource doing these three things. And somebody will say, I need 2 months to give you a new server. I hope not these days, but it's possible, right? Well, here we go. It means that, well, the first 2 months are gone. So you can't install, you can't do this, you can't do that. So here's an example again. You'll have access to that in this presentation. Training, as you can see here, there's stuff for project management. Like I said, I always add contingency. So here's an example of a basic project plan. Okay, you cannot do it without a solid platform. So you've done your assessment. That's the box of chocolate. You've done your project plan. That's great. You've built your servers. Now, you've built brand new empty servers with nothing. Now, before you start migrating everything, you want to make sure those servers work. There's no point to dump 500,000 WebI document if, I don't know, the install actually didn't work properly. Your config is wrong. The DBAs did not install the ODBCs or the Oracle connectivity properly. So the way I've always done it, and I have 2 slides on this, is I do this thing which I call functional testing. So I install my server, I configure it based on my assessment, I migrate, some of the universes, and then I do all of these tests. Can I log on to every tools that I use? Can I log on with all the different authentication that I need? Active Directory or single sign-on or SAP, whatever it is. I have UNVs, can I use it? Oh, I have UNX, can I use it? And so on and so on. And here's a list of, log on, create stuff, export. Is comments important for you? Test comments. If are you scheduling? Yes. Which format are you scheduling? I have seen sometimes a bug in business objects. PDF worked and Excel didn't. Well, if Excel is important, it stops right there until you raised it with SAP. Email disk is important. There are rights associated to this. If you don't test this, and suddenly you try to schedule your daily 150 instances, while you have 150 failed email, better to find out earlier on, and so on and so on and so on. So a lot of things here. So you can't even continue without a solid platform.
And the funny thing is, on your slide just before, was funny is you see UNV to UNX is quite amazing still to see so many people are in UNV today. And actually, I'd be interested to know in the audience if some people are still in UNV, just put a comment in the chat. That's interesting. And so the past question is, yes, I do see that some people mentioned they do side by side or in place. So feel free to also put in the chat box, or if you still got some UNV to UNX, because that can also be an issue in some cases. And of course, if you got some questions around the tips and tricks, feel free to ask your questions. Let's go to the next one, Patrick.
Yeah, okay. Now this one, the topic of this session is to make it effortless. So practicing, it's not less effort, it's more effort, because you're actually going to do something before you do the real project. But sometimes, a little effort for maximum satisfaction. I will spare you the name of the guy who says that in the UK on TV where I live. But if you come from 3.1, you have to use the upgrade management tool. If you in 4, you have to use the promotion management wizard. Like I said, configuring in a very specific way third-party authentication is important. Migrating your objects and their rights, and think also universe restrictions. It needs to be done in specific order. Well, if it's all at the same time, big bang, it's okay. If you decide to do phase upgrades, it's very important. And to practice the method, I've done a migration a long time ago, and it was a big retail all around the UK, and they said, right, okay, well, we're not going to do all the retail shops in London at once. We'll do 1 or 2 in London and 1 here and 1 there. So, and we did it. Yeah, we did, I forgot now, 10, 15 phased upgrades. Well, it was a concern because you had a manager who was working in that branch and that branch. Well, I had to think of all those things and practicing that move. So there was zero stress when I went live. It was really useful. Same with the recurring instances. And final comment here about the RAM and the temp disk space. And there's a formula on the SAP website somewhere, but if you have 50 gigs of file store, you will need, I forgot how much now, 75 or 100 gigs of temp disk space. And temp space, I know it's not really a problem. You just need to know, but that's the point. If you don't practice it, if you don't know, if you don't prepare, you launch your promotion manager wizard. After 18 hours, it failed because of disk space. Well, you have to start again. So I like to practice when it's the right kind of project and when you can. Test. Yeah, Jude, test a lot. So before we talked about the functional test, right? I'm happy. I know my server will work well. Now that I have migrated your content, can the users log on? Like I said, test all the tools. Is the security all right? Is all your documents and by type, are they all working? Universe connections, of course, instances, all the destinations. For those of you with a cluster, is my load balancing and failover working as expected? And I wrote here to involve the users. Now, many users don't want to do it. They can't be bothered. They don't have the time. But others would actually welcome the opportunity to test their own stuff. So I would say in all cases, it's good to ask if you can get their buy-in and at least them to test their own stuff. So it's saving you sometimes, perhaps. That's quite good. Okay, now it's on. Now, the reason why I've chosen this one is I have seen many companies, working in the shadows with us, external consultants doing all the work, and they send an email on Friday to say, oh, by the way, Monday morning, it will be this new version without any communication. And it's ridiculous. You might have a department it's the end of the quarter. It's the worst time for them. Or somebody just created some new stuff on Friday, which will not be there on Monday because the cutoff was at whatever time it was. So communicate your project plan, communicate the rules, train your users. I have a slide about training just next. And if users don't want to test, fine, but then maybe they should have the expectation that maybe you're only testing the corporate stuff and the universe is not their personal content, so it becomes their responsibility. So expectation is important, and communicate about the go live. These people, or all of you, would be live on that date. There was a cutoff or no cutoff, or we're expecting to have to use 2 environments for a month. I mean, I don't know, but communicate the go live.
And Patrick, the fact that you're communicating with your business users, we know it's very critical, but the good thing out of that as well is they're going to become more responsible, and you're in a way going to share the risk, saying, you know what, I've done everything I could from my end, from an IT side, and I can't, it's like a box of chocolate. There's always something that's going to taste a little different. And you've got to test your content. You've got to test that it works. And that's why we've got like a testing phase. And the fact that you are clearly communicating with the users about all the phases, about why they have to test, it's going to drastically reduce the amount of problems that you'll get. Because at the end of the day, is if something doesn't work, they're going to go back to you. Okay, that have no doubt, because it's always the same thing. And it's going to be your fault at the end of the day. But if you can actually communicate properly with them, saying, do the test, do the test, do the test, you're going to save a lot of time and a lot of trouble for them and for you.
It's all about the adoption, the user satisfaction. If the new server, if it's a new thing, everybody expects it to be better and faster, right? If they don't like the performance, they don't like this new version, they don't adopt it, it's not good for you. Imagine if somebody in the business has the power to say, this is not happening, it's not good enough. then you need to roll back stuff, which is even more painful than doing the upgrade in the first place. So yeah, just put yourself in the right place for all this. Just conscious of time. Training now, not Terry Crews physical training, but business subjects training. Now, all of you, I'm sure, know that 4.3 has a new BI Launchpad. So the portal that users will be using is different. Consuming Webby is different, and creating Webby is extremely different. So for the last 10 years, nobody needed to worry too much about training. Now you do. SAP has provided a lot of videos on YouTube. Here they are. You like them, great. If you don't, I would strongly suggest that you have a bit of some internal, again, part of communication as a training, something to say, hey, your button before was here, now it's there. And you know, before it was called like this, now it's called like that. So again, it will drive adoption and user enablement.
And Patrick, just to go back on slide 9, we still got a little bit of time, it's fine. To go back on slide 9 is, what's the best way, like, you know, a lot of people are concerned going from 4.2 to 4.3, and some people actually haven't properly planned, you know, the upgrade and haven't planned the training right, I know. And what's the right way to go with the new Fiori interface? How would you recommend to onboard the users?
What we used to do, again, when I used to do migrations, either we would do it on the behalf of the customer, or the customer would have a, you know, some education center or some people who are best suited to do this. But I would really recommend you have either it's a PDF, or it's easy to just do recorded screen sharing something. Yeah, I would really put a link somewhere to say, hey, this is, you know, record your screen and explain. This was this before, this is the new URL, perhaps it's a new URL. This is how the login screen looks like. And I know for the experts, it's obvious, but you know, the less IT people or people who use business objects once a week or once a month, you know, it's not the thing they might be the most familiar with. So I would really recommend these SAP videos are okay, but they're generic. Nothing's better than having your URL, your server name, your login screen, your folders, and somebody navigating through all this so people can, you know, onboard the new system better. I would definitely recommend doing this. It takes minutes to do, and it has huge value.
And right, Patrick, in 4.3, there is no choice. Like in 4.2 SP7, you've got the choice for either, but in 4.3, you must go to Fiori, right? No choice.
No choice. No choice. This the good old BI Launchpad is all gone. It's only the Fiori navigation Launchpad and only the Fiori Webby. And even if you use the rich client, it's the new one. So the old world is not there anymore. So maybe you want to do 2 videos, you know, or 2 enablement, one for the consumers and also for the people who are editing and creating Webbies.
Thanks.
Now, the go live. I said Big Bang and phase earlier. So Big Bang, it's easy. You take everything, go to 4.3, you go live. Yes, testing and all that, but everything is there in one shot. It's easy. Now, it's never easy about the Delta. Yeah, you migrate everything today. You spend a week or 2 or 3 weeks to test the users and training and all of these things, and you're ready then to go live. Well, things change in your source environment during that time. Instances, people created stuff. You need to bring the Delta. There's unfortunately only 3 ways, let's say, to do this one. You know what has changed, and you manually go and select them and you bring them. Okay, the problem you have is, what if you change or you fix things at the destination, and you know, the bit of nightmare there. The second thing is, you could decide to just bring everything and overwrite everything again, but you can't really do that if it takes many hours to migrate everything, and then you have to reconfigure things afterwards or repair things. Or at 360, we have a solution for that. Of course, we'll talk about that later, but we have a promotion tool where we can say, hey, identify the delta for me and bring it in some different ways that you want, so we can automate that. That's big, man. The phase multiple go live, the bigger companies with a lot of teams may prefer to do this, and that's great. But again, you have to be careful. If you just promote a folder, you promoted it without security. Same thing, if you promote a universe, it comes without security, without restrictions. You need to bring the groups and the users at the same time. But you might have issues if these groups of these users were already migrated as part of a previous phase migration. So again, this is where the planning and the practicing will help you. I think a good practice to do is, let's say you have migrated the HR team, and you tell the HR team you have to use this new environment. You will always have users who don't read their emails, so they still access the old environment, or they don't like this new 4.3 interface, so they log on to 4.2. Most of the times I've done migration, we had a plan where we would change the security model in the old environment to be read-only. If people didn't trust, so they wanted to open reports side by side, or people, for whatever reason, missed an email, well, yes, they could still access the old server, but they could not create new things or edit existing things. So I think that's quite a good practice. Now, we all hope that everything will go perfectly. Sometimes it doesn't. Do you have a rollback strategy? If you go live and after 1 minute it fails, it's easy. You just use the old one. But let's say it takes 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, and you have a meeting and somebody says, all right, is it go or no go now? Somebody says, no, we need to roll back. Now, you have hours of people who have created stuff on the new environment. Is it strategic or not? Have you missed instances? What about the old instances? Were they on pause or not? So have a strategy for rollback. And this is valid for the in-place. Some of people have replied to say, we like the in-place. Okay, be careful. Read the pros and cons, I suggest that. But if you spend an entire day or day and a half to upgrade in place, to test everything, and it doesn't work, now you can always say, okay, but that's fine. I have my VM backups and all this. I can always roll back. Yeah, but that's assuming you've done that on the weekend, out of office hours. What about your instances? Again, rolling back is a point which is often neglected and very important. Decommissioning, sooner or later, somebody will say, hey, do you still need these old servers? And one day you'll say, no, I don't need them. Well, when they're gone, it's gone, obviously. My point of that is, if you have a backup of the old environment, and then you promoted to the new environment, but you did a cleanup in the old one. If somebody one day realized, oh, I need stuff that was in the old server, well, not only you don't have the old servers, but you have backups that you can't restore anywhere because you don't have the old server. So that's why I prefer migrate everything on the new environment, backup the new environment, delete on the new environment. If somebody forgets something, well, it's the new environment. You can restore things easily. And finally, documentation. The amount of times I've been involved in a project where I say, hey, what's the password for that service account? Or where's that database for this? Or have you customized any PRM or SBO file on the business object server? And people don't know, for either it was too long ago, or it was not them who did it, or whatever the reason is. If you document, it means your future processes are a lot easier. And finally, like I said, people often ask, do you have a list? Well, I can't have a list for everybody. Everybody's different. In place, side by side, 4.1, 4.2, Lumira, no Lumira. Yeah, but just read the information that is relevant to you. Do create a project plan, because there'll be more than you doing the work for sure. prepare properly, build a new server, make sure it's working. If you touch anything, anywhere, make sure you have a backup, be safe, test as much as possible and share the love, right? It's not only on you to test, make sure the users test, and we have automated tools to help you testing if it's what you need. Now, once you're being ready, it's not only you, the business objects administrator, is the developers having the right version of the client tools, is the end users having access to everything. So again, be ready, and then you'll win. Yeah, if you have all of these things, you'll have a rockstar go live strategy, and your chance of failing are extremely low. So yeah, that is it.
Thank you very much, Patrick. So please ask your questions in the chat box. Also, if you can go to the slide, so we've actually put together a checklist that will be shared with the follow-up. So that's on the next slide, Patrick. And basically, of course, I think it was like what the tip number 5 or 6, where you had that project plan. Of course, we'll share that. But here is like we put a methodology around and some knowledge around that checklist that will help you to do faster upgrades and make sure that you don't forget anything. In addition, we've put together a 10-step methodology around how to upgrade faster and cheaper. So we've actually been working on that for, I'm sure, over 10 years, and we've refined it during all these years. And we've done hundreds of migrations with that. So it's very, very robust, and it really works. It's proven. So we'll share some information around that. And then to do upgrades like that, we put together 2 packs that you can select. It's either a professional and advanced one. It just depends of the needs that you have. Feel free to let us know. By the way, we've got a poll here. If you would like to get some help from us, just let us know. So first is, let us know if you want to get the checklist. The second thing is, do you want to get some information around the upgrade package? So actually, it's the same for number 2 and number 3. Always better 2 than 1. You want to get a demo, or do you want to get some trial keys? So please feel free to answer to that, and we'll be more than happy to get back to you, of course.
While people vote for this, Bruno, should we go quickly through the questions?
Yeah, let's go to the questions, and sure. Let's go to the questions. So there are a few questions, so let's probably close the poll. Okay, in terms of questions, yeah, sure, of course. Will you get the presentation? Yeah, if you behave well during this event, of course, you'll be getting the presentation. So have no worry about it.
If you answer the poll, I see only half of the people have voted. No voting, no Q&As.
Come on. Well, let's close the poll, and I think it's actually 80%. Joke aside. So in terms of questions, Patrick. So I see. Actually, there are still people that are doing in place versus side by side. So good luck on that.
Listen, I know very few people who attempt that. People who do, there's a lot of problems. I'm not saying it's 100% failure. I'm just saying there are challenges. If you have one server with Webby only and nothing crazy, no SAP connectivity, nothing like that, you know what? Maybe this is where the practice, you really want to practice, but 4.3 upgrades your Tomcat, so automatically your Active Directory is broken, for instance. So, I mean, it's, again, have a look at the SAP blog I did a live one, a 4.2 to 4.3, and I listed all the problems I had. And this is something I'll never do because, well, it's risk, right, at the end of the day. But again, if you can get a VM and set it up, practice. Okay, will you provide the template? I mean, yes, everything demonstrated today or presented today will be provided.
Hey, We have a comment from Jana. Hey, good to see you, Jana. Long time, long time. And actually, she's saying we've got some customers that are, in UNV and one customer who's actually in UNX. And so, Patrick, in 4.3, you confirmed that UNV is still working?
Same as in 4.2, both of them working, both of them supported, both of them working with the tools. So yeah, no problem there.
Guys, come on, it's not, at the end, just you've got to go to UNX. It's just a matter of time. So just get it done. It's been going on for years. So just do the effort, and it's a pretty straightforward method now. So
you would think that one day SAP will stop support. I mean, it's not planned. There's no documentation, but you would think that there'll be an issue they'll stop one day, and then we'll be back to the days where SAP stopped supporting desk key and people had 1 million desk keys, and it was a big problem. So I would definitely recommend that every new universe you build is in UNX at very least. And then at least maybe have a plan, even if it's a medium or long-term plan, but at least a plan somewhere to convert universes to UNX when it makes sense, that's for sure. So question from Lily, if eventually we all need to go to Analytics Cloud, do we need to upgrade to 4.3 or 4.2? So, okay, first of all, you don't need to go to Analytics Cloud. It's a separate offering. It's not the same use cases, between operational reporting and the cloud stuff to do AI and all that. You can't leverage the same amount of data the same way. So no, you don't have to go to Analytics Cloud. Business Objects is supported for another at least 7 years. But if you want to do a hybrid, so Analytics Cloud communicating with universes on your Business Objects, that's supported with a later version of Business Objects, but there's more capabilities with 4.3. So more features. SAC can extract data from Webby reports if you have 4.3. So I hope I've answered that question. You don't have to go to Analytics Cloud. Of course, SAP wants you to do that, but Business Objects is around for, again, a very long time. Lily asking about the UNV to UNX. No, again, like I said, you don't have to, but please at very least create new universes in UNX. The interface is much nicer, more capable, and it's the future anyway. So at least if in 5 years time SAP says, oh, okay, Business Objects 4.4 or 5, something like they say UNVs will not work, well, at least you'll be in the right direction. Randy, regarding migrating data, does the promotion manager will have the option to migrate using an option of objects change as of date? Yes, there is, but it will not cover all the delta options. So make sure you have a look. Jana, where in the checklist would you place moving from Linux to Windows? That's a good question. Actually, there's no problem in doing this. I've done it before. So this is just part of your project plan, and you're at the beginning just to say, hey, my new servers will be Windows. Then it's the same checklist, same test, same process, same everything. The promotion management wizard doesn't mind who's the source and who's the target. So yeah, no problem to do that at all. Scott, he's taking us for the nice hats and wish he had a hat for the Montreal team. Again, thank you. Kim Burley, how does 4.3 act with JBoss? Any known issue? I personally don't use JBoss. I haven't in many years, so Kimberly, I'm sorry, I don't know. What's important is to see if the version of JBoss that you want is supported in the PAM. If it's supported, you would think that there's no problem. If there is, obviously, it's supporting with SAP. But I personally have done 99.9% of the time with Tomcat. And thank you, Jaya Kumar, for the feedback.
Patrick, if you can go to the next slide. So, thanks all for joining the session. We've got another session just after, so it's going to start at 10:30 Eastern. If you can just move on to the next slide, Patrick. So the next session will be around handling PII and sensitive content in business objects. So we'll explain during that session what PII is and sensitive content and how to deal with it in analytics. So as usual, when you log out, please answer the survey. Anyway, you'll be logged out automatically, and you'll just need to use the same link to connect again. Thanks all, and yeah, we've got an awesome attendance rate, so that's great with I think over 180 people in total who registered, so that's really phenomenal. Thanks a lot, Patrick, and have a
thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the morning with us.
Cheers.